Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live immigration Q&A. I'm Mark Holthe, and this is the Wednesday live Q&A edition. I am not alone today. Today, I have my colleague, Cedric Marin, who's here joining me. How are you, Cedric?
I'm very well, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing really good. It's great to have you with me. Thanks for joining me.
Absolutely.
All right. So, yes, Wednesday, and we are broadcasting on the Canadian Immigration Podcast, which you guys will be listening to this as a recording. Great to have you on board, as well as YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn and even Twitter. So the way this works, for those of you who are new, we, immigration lawyers, Mark and Cedric today, are going to come on and we're going to answer any questions that you have about immigration. And I'll be honest, it's pretty open. It's open to share whatever insight we have on pretty much any aspect of Canadian immigration, the programs and things like that. But if you get into very specific questions that only relate to your specific unique circumstances, then we ring that bell, which is kind of quiet. Maybe let's turn up the bell a little bit so people can hear it. There we go. That bell is an indication that your question is really legal advice. And as immigration lawyers, we are very, very conscious not to provide legal advice unless we get all the facts. And so in those circumstances, what we do is we direct you fine folks back to our firm website, which is Holthe Immigration Law. And right up in the top corner, you can click on Speak to a Lawyer and you can book that consultation. And so that's basically how it works. So if you're going through and you're posting a question and it's really specific, not something that would benefit everybody who's watching generally, then sometimes we will bypass those questions. So we do the best to choose the questions that are of the most benefit to the group. And generally, we try to get through as many as we can. We know we can't hit all of you, but we try to also pull from as many different organizations, as many groups that we have, social channels as we have, to get a little bit of a mix. But it's all designed to try to help you guys avoid some of the most common problems that people run into. And yeah, it's great to have you here, Cedric, joining me. And let's see where people are tuning in from. We've got Ms., who's over in Paris. We've got Ralph, who is my brother from another mother. Good to see you, Ralph. I'm definitely going to head up there to Edmonton to see you guys and my little namesake, Jaden. And so thanks for tuning in. It's great to have you. Tahir's over in Facebook. He's on the Canadian Immigration Institute Facebook page. Tahir, thanks for joining. Let's see here. What do we have next? Harjas says, good morning, Mark and Cedric. So good to have Harjas here. And then, of course, Gunnar Boy. I can't remember what your name is. That's hilarious. But you're the one who's got that handle on your YouTube. So Gunnar Boy says, hey, Mark, thank you for everything you do. I hope both of you are doing great. I'm doing good. How are you, Cedric?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. Okay, Tahir, hold off on your question. Post it again a little bit later. He's asking about Red Seal. That's a very open-ended question, but we can definitely talk about that one. Absolutely. Bokang says, hey, Mark, welcome, Cedric. Oh, you're getting some love, my friend. Getting some love. That's awesome. And those of you who have questions, hold off and we'll get to them. Like Christine here, she says, if a person gets married to a Canadian citizen, will this limit their ability to travel back and forth into the US and Canada? The short answer is maybe, but not significantly. But we'll address this when Christine, I'll come back. She's tuning in on LinkedIn. Great to have you here, Christine. And I'll just let everybody know as well, when you go to our YouTube channel, and I'm going to pull this up, just like a lot of the other channels, we always try to post when we're going to go live. And so one of the best things that you can do is go to, if it's YouTube that you're watching, and you can see tomorrow the live stream I have with Alicia, you can click this little notify me. Sometimes it's a bell, whatever it might be, and make sure that you subscribe to it as well, the channels. Okay. So, yeah, so definitely if you do that, then you'll get notified when we go live, and then you might just get your question answered. So hang in there, Christine. We'll remind me, Cedric, to get back to Christine's. All right. Jagnur says, good morning from Vancouver. Good to see you, Jagnur. Nisrin says, hello, Mark and Cedric. Thanks for your help and advice. I will give Nisrin some applause there. You're very welcome. Amy, consistent follower. Good to see you again. He says, hi, hello, Mark and Cedric. Let's see. And remember also that you don't need to repost it over and over your comment. We'll give you the green light, the thumbs up when it's time to post questions, and then we will go from there. We've got a few things we want to talk about before we dive into the actual questions. So hold off and we'll let you know when to post those if you're posting them. Say, good to see you. He says, hello, Mark. Let's see what else we have here. Paul is tuning in on the Express Entry. Actually, he's tuning on Facebook on the Canadian Immigration Institute Facebook page. And let's see, we've got EJ, who's over in Riyadh. Nice, Saudi Arabia. He says, hey, Mark and Cedric, watching from Riyadh. Great to have you. And Rehab here says, spousal sponsorship. Yes, we will talk about that. Absolutely. And Miss says, hello, Cedric from, where's that?
Champs-Élysées in
There
Paris.
we go. There we go. Paris. Excellent. Very cool. Samrat says, hello, Mark. Just want to say thanks for all of the help for my PR card. All right. Yes. It was my pleasure, Samrat. You were waiting far, far, far too long, my friend. And I am absolutely delighted. Hopefully, let me know. Did you actually receive it? Did the officer who I contacted, did they actually send it to you? Let me know. Okay. All right. Ralph, yes. Once again, hello. He says, yes, people want to talk about sponsorship. Mariana, hello, Mariana. Good to see you, joining from Toronto, and Emmanuel's over in Winnipeg. So, few shout outs there. I like to do that. Let people know that we appreciate them and that, yes, this is a live broadcast and people are tuning in from all over the world. So we absolutely love to see that. Okay, Cedric, what are you working on these days? What's coming? You know, one of the things when lawyers join the firm, the first thing they do is start writing blogs and teaching and educating. And so what are you working on, my friend?
Yeah, well, I really want to take, share a lot with people about what to do when your immigration application has been refused. So we're actually starting a series of blogs on how you can actually do it yourself. So we have step-by-step guides for example, for visa reconsideration requests, all the way up to contacting a lawyer for more complicated matters like judicial reviews or appeals. So very excited to share my first blog on reconsideration requests. So it's going to tell you how to do it, when you should get an ATIP, when is it justified to do a reconsideration request, and when it's not justified. So I really want to build on my expertise as a decision maker where I come from the United Nations and the Government of Canada, and look into ways how we can assist our clients.
Very cool.
It's super important. Well, as you know, if you stress so many times, if you get bad advice from the beginning, it can be very hard. We can't. In some cases, there's nothing that we can do. We've had clients this week where they're just in very tough situations. So very excited to share this series. First blog should be published any minute now. So that's one of the things we're working on.
Absolutely.
Just to loop back to the entry remarks, there's a new PR card application that just came out in June. Mm-hmm. So for those of you who have your PR in Canada, you're applying for your PR card and also for permanent residence travel documents. So keep an eye on that because the new documents have come out. And if you're applying for it right now, you definitely want to update your forms before submitting it. Also very exciting, as we know, there's going to be 16 new occupations that are going to be coming out, expected to come out in November. So we're also going to be publishing a blog on this. So we're talking about truck workers, personal support workers. This is going to be eligible for express entries. So it's quite exciting. It's quite exciting.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. For years and years, truck drivers were classified as a skill level C. And, the drivers were paid, really high wages, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 Canadian a year. And so it's very, very timely that, that when they shift the knock categories, that those in some healthcare as well. And like Cedric said, there's going to be blogs coming out on that topic. In addition to the reconsideration, and every blog will be spun into a video where we can answer your questions specifically about it. And that's, I think, one of the things I like most, Cedric, is it's one thing to post a blog, but then it's an entirely other thing to open it up for questions so people can seek clarification. And I really, really enjoy that because that even infuses what we put into our courses. And when we create our DIY courses and masterclasses, they're built on the awesome questions that people ask right here on our live Q&As, and just the information that we learn as we go through the process collaboratively with you guys as our clients when you retain us. So very, very cool. So 2 blogs coming up, and anything else, Cedric? Cedric's got a bunch of stuff. He's hitting the pavement running here.
Yeah, donc évidemment, en tant que francophone, nous cherchons toujours à discuter du programme de francophone mobilité. Donc, si vous êtes un francophone, si vous parlez français, évidemment, vous pouvez obtenir certains points pour votre entrée express ou même pour votre demande de travail. So, if you speak French, you don't have to work in French, but if you have French as if you're good at French, you can pass a French test. You can definitely get extra points for your express entry, or also for a work permit. In some cases, you can have a work permit, a labor market impact assessment exempt. So it does give you, so a lot of, I really want to make sure that, the francophones outside of Canada understand that they can come to Canada, they can live in Canada outside of Quebec, and there's different programs. It's going to be easier to come to Canada, essentially, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that. If you are a francophone, if you speak French at a decently high level, you really have a leg up when it comes to going through express entry. There's up to 50 additional points up for grabs there. And so it is, that's one of the wonderful things that we have, Cedric here, Chanel and Alicia both speak French, and I don't. I'm speaking here to Bal here. Olá, Bal. Como está? Tudo bem? So a little Portuguese for Bal here. I love the Portuguese flag, Bal. Muito, muito legal. All right. So so there's lots of things. So make sure, and when Cedric's talking about the blogs, basically where you find all of this information is to go to our firm website, holthylaw.com, and go to our resources page and then click on blog. And when you click here, you'll see that there is a bunch of information, including one from yours truly here, Express Entry, The Secret to Finding Your Correct Knock. I've got that blog post. We've got one that Alicia just did. And there's a ton. So check these out. And very soon, even today, I suspect we're going to have Cedric's blog on the reconsideration world posted. And this is an area that, unfortunately, Cedric, we get a lot of consultations from people. For whatever reason, they choose to reach out after things go sideways. And like you identified, sometimes there isn't anything that we can do. We do our very best, but there's, sometimes there just isn't things that we can do. All right. I also wanted to identify one other thing with our viewers, and that's the fact that changes are coming for international students. And the minister, as some of you have probably heard, and it's actually reported on some of our mainstream media, the fact that the minister's got to come up with a solution. He's got about 120 days, a pretty tight timeline up until September to come. Boy, this is living on the edge here. Come on, let's go. I got my, he would have been pawing my arm because my wife just came home. He would have been pawing my arm the whole time, and I wouldn't have been able to think straight. He runs the family. Simba does. Yes, the dog. Anyways, so the minister is under a very tight timeline to come up with a plan, because you guys know how many hundreds of thousands of international students there are, both going through school, who are on postgrads. Every single day, we are just constantly on edge, waiting for the minister to announce the new changes, or at least the program delivery instructions for the new postgrad work permit extension. Alicia hates when I describe it as an extension, but the 18-month postgrad work permit, the instructions, we're hoping, we expected that it would be in June. So we'll just have to wait and see. And once that's launched, I want you guys to hang tight, and I will do a full debrief of it in the evening, late afternoon, because we had a bunch of people who they simply screwed it up the last time they did it. And there's nothing we could do, because often they didn't get notified of the refusal until after the time had passed, and they couldn't save it. So this time I am geared up 100% to make sure that I provide my top tips and areas that people need to be aware of when they're filing that application. But until we get the actual program delivery instructions, it doesn't really do a whole lot of good to offer my estimation or guesstimation as to what it's going to look like. There may even be a new portal. We're just not sure. So we'll see how that plays out. But if you are one of those postgrad work permit holders whose work permit is expiring, or it's going to be expiring pretty quick, Hopefully, if it has expired, you've applied to extend your stay as a visitor, which we've done tons of consults on that with individuals just to make sure they maintain status. But yeah, we're waiting anxiously. But the minister has to come up with another program. It's not going to be another TR to PR pathway, but it will be something similar to it. So we'll see how that plays out, Cedric. And as always, we're here to help you guys in your journey through our collaborative review process. So stay tuned for that. And the moment we learn more, we will be sure to let you know. Okay, you can now post your questions and we will start pulling those up, and over the for the next about 40 minutes or so, we'll get those. As we wait for these questions to now come in, make sure that you put a Q in front of it, just like FL 350 here. Make sure you put a Q in it, and then I'll know that is a question and not you guys just talking amongst yourselves on the channel. So Cedric, any last little pieces before we start diving into the questions? Anything else that you wanted to share?
No, that's good. Thanks. Let's dive right into it.
All right, let's do this. Let's do this. Okay. Can something interrupt or should be taken into consideration in the process of traveling to Canada for work after signing an LMA approved contract under a closed work permit? Okay, can something interrupt or should be taken into consideration? Well, maybe I'll jump in here and address this one, Cedric. What are some things that can go sideways? Well, at any point in time, once the work permit is issued, all the way up until the point of you traveling to Canada, the employer can pull it. They can say, well, we no longer have a job offer. It can be revoked. There's a whole host of things up until the point. And even when you have your work permit, if you apply outside of Canada and you appear at the port of entry, if an officer feels that, the job is not genuine or they make a decision that the position you're coming into doesn't exist anymore, they can send you back if they have full ability to reassess, even if they want to. So not exactly sure, FL, what, as far as interrupting or taking into consideration in the process of traveling, you have to be admissible. And, the things, the parameters, I always take what I originally submitted with me. So if you filed online, I always have copies of those documents to support the application, even though it's been approved by the visa office, because officers always have the ability to make a second look at it and a second decision. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, let's see the next question. Okay, we get a lot of this, so I'll pull this one up, Abid. So Abid says, hello, Mark, my OINP application is being delayed. 90 days have been passed, even 100 days for many as well. Is the team working on something else other than elections since they are over in sight? Please. So basically, what's your thoughts on processing, Cedric? I don't know if you've got any thoughts on this. We've seen, not only at the federal level, but at the provincial level sometimes. And yes, Ontario went through an election and maybe there's some reshuffling. Usually the civil servants are significantly impacted by provincial elections, especially when the incumbent sticks around and the Conservatives, were reelected. But any thoughts for poor Abid here and all of the many others that are seeing their applications pending 100 days?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, COVID has created a lot of backlogs. It's no surprise, and everyone's trying really hard to go through the backlogs. Just like the federal programs, we really hope that a lot of the changes to clear the backlog will be advantageous to our clients and people who want to come to Canada, right? So, unfortunately, be patient. You can consider also making an access information request if you'd like to see more about your file. But to be honest, it's just a waiting game for a lot of clients, including those in PNP programs.
Yeah. Yeah. And with the OINP, we've got another question, same thing from Satyaki, who basically says, it's taking an eternity. Each province is different and processing times, they fluctuate. They go up and down, up and down. There was a time in Alberta when it was taking up to 9 months to get a nomination. When, things were really heated, they were backlogged. So, 3 months is not a significant amount of time when it comes to the processing of nominations historically. And I know the problem is that when a PNP is working really super efficiently, then everybody gets, expectations set, right? That their applications are going to be approved in a certain periods of time. And where it really becomes a problem Satyaki, for sure. And why people are probably wondering, well, what's the big deal? Well, it's when work permits are expiring, right? And when you need to file your PNP application through the PR portal, which yesterday I had an hour and a half long meeting with the developers of the portal, just discussing. It was basically a pains point discussion where representatives of the Canadian Bar Association, CAPIC, and ACADI, which is the Quebec Immigration Lawyer Association, we met with them to discuss the problems that we were having with the portal, the same problems you guys are having. And so what are we doing? We're advocating on your behalf to try to sort out some of this messy stuff. Well, for people who are looking at the processing times for PNP nominations, often work permits are expiring, right? And so you need that. And then you need to file through the PR portal and then wait for your acknowledgement of receipt before you can file for your bridging open work permit. So we get it. We get it. And yeah, processing times are probably, they probably make up a third of the posts here in our live stream. All right. Okay. Himanshu over in Facebook says, can a parent with 10-year TRV apply for 5-year super visa? Thanks. So this is actually a good question. So we know that over the last stretch, the government has announced that, and if you do a Google search and you look super visa, I think, let's see here, super visa Canada update 2020. I'm going to shift over here. I'll show you what I do. So super visa Canada update 2022. If you click on this, I'm always curious what pops up here. Usually, yeah, Facebook, yeah, Google still likes me. So you can see here, super visa to Canada, new 2022 update. You can go to the YouTube channel right here and scroll down and you can see, and you got to check out my Monster Pike video. This is going to be moved over, guys, to my new out of office channel, but I just can't help but posting it. It was so much fun. So you got to check that out. Anyways, but if you go down here, you can see that we have created, and if I can find it, where is it? Right. Maybe I got to scroll over a bit. There, this one right here, the super visa, you can check it out. So this is what Himanshu is talking about here. So basically, the government announced for an ability to extend temporary status up to 5 years for parents and grandparents that are in Canada. So can you do a 10-year TRV, one that's already been issued? Remember that visa allows entry and exit without having to extend the visa for 10 years. But it doesn't, at the time before this announcement, didn't allow parents and grandparents to just stay up to 5 years. They could stay for up to 2 years. But that change has now occurred. So the short answer, Himanshu, is, well, what do you think, Cedric? What do you think the short answer is to Himanshu's question here? If you're already approved under the old program, are they going to grandfather you in? Are you going to be able to extend?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. There's
If you already have a TRV, I mean, going over to the super visa program should be, you still have to show your temporary intent. You're gonna have to get insurance for sure, but it's definitely a good sign that the super visa is going to be, quite straightforward.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Sorry, just to emphasize, super visa is 5 years per entry, right?
Yeah.
So when we're dealing with a regular visitor visa, you can be valid for 10 years, but you're coming for 6 months at a time. The super visa, you're going to be in Canada for 5 years, up to 5 years.
Yeah.
So take care of the children, help with other tasks, be there in the lives of in your life is great. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Huge, especially given the current state of the parent-grandparent sponsorship process, which that's a whole other discussion, and it's really, really a mess. So, yes. All right, great question, Himanshu, over on Facebook. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, I'm going to jump back now because I told, let's see, what's her name on LinkedIn? Christine, that I would answer her question. So let's jump back before we get too far in here. Okay, and here is Christine. Okay, so Christine Eubanks says, if a person gets married to a Canadian citizen, will this limit their ability to travel back and forth into the US and Canada? So the first part to address here is getting married to a Canadian citizen. Do you want to pursue permanent residence or not? So I have an elderly couple who vacation a lot in the US, and technically the spouse, the US American spouse, does maintain her residence in the US. So it's not like she's moved permanently to Canada. But we've been humming and hawing for probably about 2.5 years now through the pandemic as to whether or not it's even worthwhile for them, because they do travel. They probably only spend about 30% of their time in Canada. is it even worth the, applying for PR? And there are a number of factors, a number of advantages to obtaining Canadian permanent residence, because when you travel outside Canada and you're accompanying that Canadian citizen spouse, every day spent outside Canada is considered a day in Canada for the purposes of retaining your permanent residence. But in their case, it didn't really make much of a difference. They've never had an issue from the officers, her coming in, and they maintain their residence. They've got a residence in Montana, and they also have another residence in another country. Okay. But so they travel a lot. And so in their case, we made the decision, well, unless an officer has a concern about her staying and coming frequently, every year at least, temporarily, we, didn't make sense to worry about it. So, and the US had not at that stage had any issues with the Canadian spouse going down south. And that's another question that I'm not, another issue that I'm not going to address here. But in your situation, Christine, let's say you're the subject of a permanent resident application, and you are living in Canada, and and you're waiting for that to be processed. Generally speaking, Canadian officers, and remember, I was one in a previous life, so a border officer, generally, as long as they know that you've got a plan in place to move forward with your application, in other words, that you're intending to sponsor or you've submitted the application, they generally don't get too hung up with people leaving and reentering, especially American citizens who do not require an entry visa. And there's a lot more facilitated travel, as long as you've got a plan in place, Christine. And this is something that we work with our clients all the time on. Generally that's not going to be an issue. Once you become a permanent resident of Canada, same story. You have a right to enter the US if you're a US citizen. And so there's never going to be an issue with you going home. The only issue sometimes can be the presumption of immigrant intent that exists on the US side, but that's US law. And like I said, I'm not going to get into that for a Canadian citizen going down. But generally speaking, it's not too big of an issue going back and forth, as long as you've got a plan in place and you can articulate that to an officer. I think some of you probably are aware as well, and I'll point this out to you, Christine, if we slide over here to the Canadian Immigration Institute, which is exactly it, .com, CanadianImmigrationInstitute.com. And there should be links in the descriptions. You can go down and click on this here, go to explore courses, and you'll see the express entry course, the master class is starting like on the 27th. I'm really excited about it. But those who have purchased, and there's a lot of people that have been purchasing access to the course, are now going through it, preparing for the live master classes, because that's where you can save up all of your questions and join me in a Q&A format just like this, but just for the people who subscribe to the course. So check that out. But later this summer, we are going to do another spousal sponsorship course. So you can reserve your spot here by clicking on this spot. And once again, all of the information that you have about the course is it's always contained here right on our landing page. And as always, there's accreditation for immigration consultants. So there you have it. I just want to give you a shout out about that, Christine, and anyone else who has questions about sponsorship. So, okay, Jagnur, good to see you tuning in from Vancouver. And Nisrin says, thanks for your help and advice. You're very welcome. Okay, I think we gave those shout outs. So let's see if we can get back to the questions now. I think I was able to get down. Okay, Tangini says, hey, Mark and Cedric, are there any updates on how Bill C-19 is progressing? So this is once again the proposed changes to express entry that will allow the minister to be strategic in the invitations that he extends. And we're still waiting for that to move forward. I haven't checked to see exactly what stage it is, but I'll be honest, you guys, will it be passed and into law by the beginning of July, when allegedly the minister is going to reinitiate those rounds of invitations? I would significantly doubt that. But I don't know, Cedric, what are your thoughts? Do you think they can pump this through the House before, and officially proclaim it and throw it into law before the minister does rounds of invitations in 2 weeks or so? What do you think?
No, I would be very impressed, and it could be very hopeful. I mean, obviously, it'd be great for those who want to come to Canada. It'd be great for the backlog. However, as we see it right now, the procedure in the Senate right now, I think there's a lot of political pressure for this to pass before the summer recess, to give the minister the authority to then go into the summer, go into fall, and have these powers to do employer-specific, location-specific express entry. So
I don't think it's going to be next month, but fingers crossed. And again, just to just to stress this, C19 is really just power for the minister, right? It doesn't actually change much for Express Entry right now. But then with these powers, the minister can then go ahead and and make changes to Express Entry. And Mark, we've requested through IRCC to get more information on Express Entry and changes. So we made this request through an access to information request. We're liaising right now with IRCC to get these documents to see what is happening. Some of them might be highly
Yeah,
blacked out,
redacted.
redacted for cabinet confidences. It's in front of Parliament
Yeah,
right now
yeah,
and whatnot. But fingers crossed that we can find more understanding, more timeline for our clients. This is super important stuff, right?
yeah. It sure is, and it impacts everyone. And remember, I think, at least from what we've heard, that the new tier knock system, knock 2021, it looks like it's going to be November. And this is something I've said all the time, even back, at the end of last year when people were getting excited about it and the changes. November is really what we're looking at. And like Cedric said, we're going to be doing a blog post on the awesome, occupations that are currently C, not eligible for Express Entry, that because of the tier shift will be. So there's going to be benefits to it. There's going to be far less that are going to be, removed, disqualified, and more, that, like we said, like truck drivers and some of the healthcare occupations that were lower, considered traditionally lower skill, that weren't eligible, that will be now. So let's see how that plays out. Okay, next question is from Carlos, and this is a caregiver question, and it's a general kind of question too. He says, hello, dear Mark. My wife applied for caregiver January 1st, 2022. In the end of June, we received confirmation, a request for missing documents. Carlos, did you file this yourself? I sure hope you didn't pay someone to help you. Okay, this is this is one of my pet peeves. Okay, so you submitted an application and there were missing documents. Okay, so they came back and requested, which is great, because understand, my friend, in many cases, they just return the application after 6 months, and then you're out 6 months. And that's why our collaborative review that we do for our clients is so effective. It would have prevented you from, people from getting their applications rejected and basically losing out. And sometimes it's a permanent loss. You never get a chance to reply again. But he says they submitted a request. IRCC communicated with a request for missing documents, and they provided the biometric instruction letter. So I want to know, what is going to be the next? Well, that is a loaded question, Carlos. Are they going to be satisfied with the missing documentation that you've provided? Will they continue to process if the application is complete? We know when it comes to caregiver application that they are taking an eternity. It is completely dysfunctional. It is awful. And we've had lots of collaboration with IRCC over the years through the Canadian Bar Association with how these caregiver programs should look. They've went through so many transformations to what we have today, which they thought would be a solution. But yes, because of the pandemic and other reasons, it is not. Like, let's face it, employers are not going to sit around and wait for a year or more for a caregiver when they need someone right now. And that's the current state of the situation. So what comes next? Well, if everything is 100% correct, I guess in an ideal world, it could be a passport request. But, medicals, I guess also, police clearance certificates, it depends on what you're actually missing. So there you go.
And
Any thoughts on that, Cedric? Any insight to add?
yeah, if I can just jump in briefly,
Mm.
when we're talking about the 16 new occupations that are expected in November, this provides an opportunity to individuals that may not have previously qualified for Express Entry to now qualify for Express Entry. So in this case, if your wife applied for a caregiver, I'd be very curious to know whether or not she's going to meet the training, education, the tier settings for the personal workers. Does she have an Express Entry profile that could work? And I think that's the biggest value that we have for our clients is during the consultations. We can't review all the documents, we can't go into detail, but what we can do is definitely sit down and talk about your legal strategy to immigrate to Canada. And that's value for the clients, even if
if you're a DIYer at heart, you want to do it yourself, it's fantastic. We can definitely sit down and advise you on the best option. And this is where the collaborative review model comes in, right? Where we review the forms, we review the letters, and we help clients going through. But really good value in sitting down and talking about your legal strategy to come for Canada, and keep your eye on for November 2020 to see if personal support workers category could be eligible for that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right. So first question. So Karthik says, can maternity leave, and this is an express entry question, can maternity leave be included in FSW PR application? And so, maybe I can jump in and offer my thoughts, and then I'll turn it back for your thoughts on this, Cedric. But one thing I can say, Karthik, is that you have to meet each of the elements that are essential for claiming foreign work experience. And what is typically missing from a maternity leave? The actual work, the hours of work. And so if you're not actively working, you can't claim that time. The only limited exceptions are maybe a paid vacation. So in some cases, people are receiving income on the maternity leave, but IRCC has told us repeatedly that maternity leaves cannot be counted towards work experience. Some programs, like in Quebec, some of the programs, maternity leave can be counted for the purposes of some of those programs. I just presented to the CBA's Quebec Immigration Association. I did a presentation on express entry with them just a couple of weeks ago. And that was one of the things that I found was quite interesting, was their willingness to accept that. But for IRCC and the Federal Skilled Worker Program, no, you can't. You won't be able to include that as your work experience. So that's a really, really good question. I'll give you some applause for that. Absolutely. Okay, let's see what we have next here. All right. Okay, so Pragya says, hi, this is Pragya from Toronto. In your opinion, should international students be prepared with documents for PR under that might be coming under Motion 44, or will it be for people working with TR status? Okay, so just to summarize this, the question is, should we start getting our act together right now, pending what's going to come? What do you think, Cedric? Is it worthwhile for international students to start getting their stuff prepared in advance? This is a tough question. It's a really, really difficult one.
Yeah, obviously the answer is yes. You want to make sure that that everything's in order. I mean, I don't want to speculate about what the program requirements are going to be, but I would encourage applicants right now to focus on what is inside their control, right? What is inside your control are your language tests, your medical admissibility, your police reports. This is inside your control. And again, as we stressed in other podcasts and live YouTubes, the goal of these changes is to address a backlog and address a growing Canadian need in the labor market. So we really think that it's going to be advantageous to many individuals who want to immigrate to Canada. And the question is, who exactly? But I would get as much prepared as you can. It's going to be big.
Yes. All
Absolutely.
right. One thing I guess I would add is I look back historically. So I've got the advantage, you guys, of having many, many years of seeing programs come up, little flash in the pans, we call them, essentially, where they're a one-time program. And the saddest thing for me is people who waited or delayed with getting those documents that are outside of their control. Language tests, even immigration medicals, police certificates, their educational credential assessments. They didn't have those completed. And guess what happens when a new program is announced and someone's language test is expiring or they haven't yet written it? Well, when there's a new program announced, everybody is rushing to get they're rushing to get that exam taken. And you're in a situation then where you don't have control. So absolutely, Pragya, you want to be putting things together. You want to be taking care of everything that you need to take care of. And the reality is there's not a lot of variation in what they're going to ask, right? So right off the top, if I was to do, offer a pro tip, I guess, make sure that your civil status documents, you've got those. Make sure that your passport isn't expiring. Make sure that you have, if you have the ability that you've got your language test all up to date. That's a huge issue. Make sure that your educational credential assessments, that you have those in place. They're always, those things are always being asked for. In addition, if you have employers that you've requested letters from in the past, if it's an employer that you're currently working for, that needs to be updated. And usually that's not a big issue. But if you have old work experience that you want to claim and you haven't yet got a reference letter from them, do that. And I always follow the minimum requirements for express entry, because usually that's comprehensive enough to make sure to work for all the other programs as well. So we'll see what happens with, Motion 44 and what's working forward here, and the pressures on the minister. And that's what, Motion 44 is really about, is figuring out these new programs. And we will see. We will absolutely see how this plays out. But you have control, and you don't want to be in a situation where you miss out because you couldn't get a language test booked in time. So that's within your control. Okay, we've got Sajad here. Hello, my friend. I love it when clients come in here and shout out. So great to see you, Sajad. Okay, he says, hey, Mark, nice to see you. They increased the processing time of CEC to 11 months on the website. Any thoughts on that? Waiting for 13 months now for CEC. Okay, let's take a look. So let's slide over here and do another search. And let's just see what the processing times are. So let's flip over, and you guys can look at this as well as we can. So we go to the processing times, we pull it up. We're going to economic immigration. We're going to the Canadian experience class. So right here, and then time. So you can see 11 months is what they're listing here. And that was last updated last week, June 8th. So yes, that is the situation. So any thoughts on this? They are working extra hard. Well, actually, let's go back. Let's see what this current state is for FSW. That's really where the fun and enjoyment is. Let's see what we've got here. 26 months. So you can see here, there are people that are getting, that are, I had a consult, Cedric, with someone just this week who, and I won't even begin to go into all of the ins and outs and why it resulted like this, but they were a client like Sajad, but I assisted them back in, I think it was December of 2019 to do the review and submit their FSW. They just finally got their, their visa, their passport back with their visa in it, their PR visa and their COPR. And so huge celebration, but yeah, you can do the math. Like we're in excess of 26 months there. And so this is a situation, Sajad, where, if the processing times for the Canadian experience class, if we slip back here are 11 months, and you, my friend, are sitting at 13 months, then maybe, Sajad, maybe it's worth doing an ATIP. Now, it may take 2 or 3 months to get that back, but it probably makes sense for you and I to just request it and see where it's at. We worked very hard to make sure everything was correct. So I think you're stuck in a situation where the processing times are just, they're just lagging a little bit for you. But it wouldn't hurt for us to do that. So reach out and let's see if we can request an ATIP and just get an idea of where you're at. All right. Okay. Okay. So Alexander says, and this one, I'll pass this one over to you, Cedric. Says, hi, my spouse is non-accompanying because she is a student. The process is taking so long, 25 months, that she is going to complete her studies now. Can I change her as accompanying after the passport request? So this is
so the question I would have, I mean, we don't know all the information, unfortunately, but
I'm going to flip back here, Cedric. Right here, express entry. This one here is really what drives the ship. So if we go here to the program delivery instructions, and this is what happens in the context of a change after someone has submitted their EAPR. And I know you were leading here, so I jumped the gun a little bit. But if you go down here, you guys, and you look at this, so we'll keep zip, 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 zip all the way down. Changes in circumstance declared after an EAPR has been submitted. A change in circumstance is, wait, I want my spouse to come after all. There is a section here for changes to family composition. So obviously your spouse would have been examined. All these things would have taken place. But the main issue here when we're addressing a situation with a spouse is that if you If you were married before you filed your EAPR, then you can see here they must be examined, and they can be added to the application at any time during the process, including after the visa is issued, but prior to obtaining permanent residence. So yes, the short answer is yes, they can. They're instructed to inform IRCC immediately. The principal applicant may not include a spouse in their application if it was obviously fake, you guys, which, yeah, we're not, marriages of convenience are probably not a good thing. Okay. But if a person gets married after they've submitted their EAPR, then the section A11.2 does not apply when they add that member after EAPR. However, the family member will still have to be assessed. So what does this mean right here? This pulls us back to the very beginning, if there is a change. And so basically what happens is there's certain things that if there's a change after you file your EAPR or after you get your ITA, like a birthday, sometimes there isn't an impact on your CRS score. So for example, for a birthday, if you have a birthday after you get your ITA, theoretically, if you're in a certain range, you could lose 5 points or more for every time you have a birthday. Well, what if you don't have time to submit the EAPR before that birthday comes? Well, this policy says we're not going to drop your score. So you're okay. It's locked in. But any other change that occurs between the filing of your profile and getting that ITA, and then when you submit your EAPR, the biggest issue is that you have to make sure that there are no changes that would impact your eligibility for one of the programs. So the Federal Skilled Worker Program or the comprehensive ranking system. And so I'd encourage you to slide over here and look at this, but let's just go up to the very top here. And what I want to show you here. So an officer may not issue a visa to an applicant who did not or does not meet the minimum criteria. So the minimum entry criteria, that's the eligibility for like the Federal Skilled Worker or their CAC, or did not or does not possess the qualifications for which they received their CRS score at the time when they got the ITA and when the EAPR was received. So short answer with all of this is that if that spouse was a spouse and that's at the time in which you filed your EAPR, so you listed them as non-accompanying. Well, when you did that, their comprehensive ranking system scored those points associated with that spouse were not included in your assessment. You were included as an individual. And this is a huge issue I have with IRCC because they prejudice married couples and common law couples. So if your spouse did not have the same language or education that you had, likely both of you maybe didn't have any Canadian experience, but there's 40 extra points up for grabs that are attributed to an accompanying spouse that are pulled off the principal applicant in the case of married couples versus single. So summing it all up, if you add that spouse on later at any time, all the way up into the landing part, and you say, hey, I want to have them included, they have the ability to go back and reassess everything, including provide IELTS for your spouse, provide educational credential assessments, those kinds of things, and then reassess. And if your CRS score, adding the spouse in, falls below that ITA level that you were originally granted during that round of invitations, then everything can crumble and fall apart. So if you marry after EAPR, doesn't impact. If you're changing from non-accompanying to accompanying after you filed your EAPR, they can go back and reassess. And the interesting thing, Cedric, is I had lots of discussions in the early days of Express Entry where we used that as a strategy. I said, man, if IRCC is screwing people over that are married and basically punishing them, and I used that language with them, they didn't quite see it the same way, but after I explained it to them, they kind of got it. But they've got policy rationale for why they did it. I guess they feel that if a foreign national marries a Canadian or a permanent resident, they're going to be better able to settle in Canada than if they bring their whole spouse and family. And let's face it, often spouses, accompanying spouses are, not everybody has the same level of language ability or education. That's why you have a principal applicant leading the way. But when you look at this whole situation, it really can be prejudicial for people that have spouses. But yeah, Alexander, I'm going to click on this triangle right here. You've got a lot going on, and I was able to talk generally about this, but I highly recommend that you slide over to our website over here and that you click on speak to a lawyer right here. And when you click on that button, you can go down and you can book a consult with one of our lawyers. And it's super easy, you guys. Pick the lawyer, choose the consult. Here's our man, the myth, the legend, Cedric right here. You can click 25-minute consult right here. And his timing, he's got lots of availability. So if I click on Thursday here, look at that. You're not going to get me at 5:30, you guys, because understand I'm sleeping at 5:30. And in fact, I'm still sleeping at 8. So one of the advantages you have with Cedric and his time zone is that he is able to he's got availability for appointments at a much earlier time during the day. And why do we do that? So that we've got more access for people. But you can go in, it's easy to click an appointment and book it with Cedric. And so I highly recommend that you slide over there and you do that, Alexander, and we can give you better advice, at least in terms of getting more details so that it can be proper legal advice. All right. Anything to add, Alexander? Anything to add for Alexander here? I think I probably covered it.
No, it's super detailed. And again, one of the big things we do in the consultations is talk legal strategy, right? Is it, should you get your PR, go to Canada, submit a spousal application? What is happening? What is going on with your partner in terms of future plans to continue studying, to working? So, definitely a lot of options, but we have to get this right because as you mentioned, if everything falls apart, it's obviously not great for the client, for Alexander.
Yeah, it's not at all. All right. Okay. Aberdeen says, hello, Mark and Cedric. I applied for a study visa back in August of last year. Wow. Okay. So we've got a few months here. But the update, update till I requested, okay, for GCMS notes, but there's nothing really going on my file from when they sent it. What should I do? Well, all I can do, Ibadan, is to ring the bell and say, look, we need to look into this in a lot more detail. If we look at processing times right now, you guys can see that it's theoretically they listed as 12 weeks, which I find this unbelievably unhelpful. Okay. So temporary residence, study permit from outside Canada. Right now, that study permit from outside Canada is not broken down by country, which I find very, very frustrating. So they're claiming that it's 12 weeks. Okay. And obviously in your situation here, Ibadan, there's a whole lot more than 12 weeks at play here. And so, yes, the GCMS notes, often things just kind of sit. And depending upon the country you're coming from, we know that India is a massive, massive visa office. And I'm not sure if that's where you're coming from, but there's a lot of delays, a lot of issues. And, ultimately, I have to imagine that you've blown through your admission date for school a couple times, probably September, and then the spring intake, and then the summer. So have you done anything to update your file? Is there anything that you've done to advise them that, yes, the program, I'm able to delay my admission? And these are questions we get a lot from our clients, and I recommend, Ibadan, that we dive in a little bit deeper for that one. Okay. All right. Let's jump over here to, this is a question from Flavio, and Flavio says, I own a business, but don't intend to claim work experience from it. Should I list it under work history or personal history only? Federal skilled worker, Outland. I love this. I'm going to give an applause here. So, I own a business, but don't intend to claim work experience from it. Should I list it under work history or personal history only? So what are your thoughts, Cedric? I've kind of expressed my views on not wasting an officer's time on the work history side, but what do you think about this when it comes to express entry and listing work experience?
Yeah, so at the time of submitting the express entry, you're definitely going to want to focus on the work that qualifies, gets you the points, meets the requirements. In your case, the FSW. However, once you do get your invitation to apply, you will need to actually provide everything in your personal history from schooling to vacations to unemployment and whatnot. I'd be very curious to know more about the business, what your role is, revenue. Is it a professional business? Is this not a professional business? All these factors into whether or not you could claim it as experience, and how developed the business is. Usually, Mark, when we're talking about self-employment, is a little bit different than from a business, right? In terms of the points and how it gets that calculated. So definitely need to know a little bit more. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah. Ultimately, I never list anything in the work history section that I'm not going to get any points for or that I'm not
Yeah.
claiming. If you list it, they'll ask you to provide evidence of your self-employed work experience. And as a federal skilled worker, you can claim that. And I have many, many clients who book consults trying to figure out how to claim their self-employed work experience. And I'd encourage you guys to slide over once again to the YouTube channel. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but you can click on the search button right here, type in self-employed. Let's see if we can type it in, self-employed, hit enter, and you will see that I have done a ton of videos in the past on self-employed. Like we've been at this gig for 5-6 years. And so the information and the instruction and direction hasn't changed at all. So I encourage you to slide over there. But Flavia, if you don't need it, then no, I absolutely don't put it in the work history section, but 100% absolutely, I do include it in the personal history. So after you get your ITA, additional spots will open up. And those who've received ITAs know this. Spots for address history, your personal history, and travel history. New sections will appear after you get your ITA. And that is where you want to include it. Cedric, I remember a few years back, I had a consult with a couple who had relied on some helpful advice from a friend who had gone through and got their own PR. And so now they were the experts, right? That's how it works. If you can get through your own on doing it yourself and you file your application, get approved, then hey, you are the expert. You know everything there is to know. So that's what this couple who, they relied on their friends who had gone before them to advise them. So they told them, no, you don't need to put your husband's work experience at all in the work history section for an accompanying spouse because he's not getting any points for it. Well, true. There's something to that. But then they said, in the personal history, because you want it to be consistent, just put unemployed. So put that he was unemployed. Well, the past 10 years, your husband is unemployed. Guess what happened? A procedural fairness letter came back. They were freaking out, and then they contacted me. So this helpful advice they received from their friends, they did the same thing. They also listed the husband as being unemployed during that time. But guess what? The officer didn't catch it. And this happens so many times. So then the people assume, well, that must be the law. I can do it. That's a good way of doing it. When in fact, the officer just missed it. These officers do not have a lot of time to assess applications. So in this case, this poor couple were facing a misrepresentation finding. And fortunately, we were able to resolve it. But it wasn't without a lot of pain and anguish. And so you have to be very, very careful. Following advice generally on the internet. How ironic, right, Cedric? We're here out on the internet sharing information. But that's why we do this, you guys. That's why we click the triangle and we say head over to our firm and book a consult right here with the man here, Cedric, and let us get the facts, let us get all the information, and let us give you actual legal advice. Here, it's all about information and helping you to avoid problems by educating you. That's what this is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, after many, many years of providing professional legal advice, including being licensed, insured, being in the business, being an ex-border officer, myself, working for the government in the United Nations for the last 5 years, having decided thousands of cases, we tend to catch errors and be more knowledgeable. And this is what we're trying to do, is share that knowledge with individuals.
All right, we'll wrap off with this one last comment from Yuting Zhang. And this is an interesting thought. So because Bill C-19 will pass by the Senate this month, okay, I hadn't heard that, but do you think express entry category draw will come in July? Well, we know that the express entry category draw will absolutely start in July, unless the minister is not telling the truth. And I don't feel like the minister is a liar. I think he's a pretty honest, good, decent dude. But the reality is, he said repeatedly that they will resume in July. So we've got one more draw probably, and then the following draw. So in 2 draws, we probably should see things resume. Although they could wait until the end of July. Obviously, they push everything to the very, very limit. But with things shutting down and vacation in the summer, not a lot happens. And will it actually race through? Well, there's lots of people speculating, and I guess they're trying to push it. And if it somehow did race through and become law, then it's entirely instantly the minister could do whatever he wants, whatever he wants to do. Excuse me. Wow. That is one scratchy throat. Okay, I'm good. See, if this was a podcast episode, I would just cut that out. But when you're live, you don't have the ability to do that. So, okay. So yeah. So we know that the rounds are supposed to start in July, and regardless of what happens with C-19 and where it gets to. So that is part of the reason, you guys, why we're doing this. That is the reason why I started the Express Entry course. I reopened the cart for right now. You can go now and buy it. And all the information is on here about the Express Entry process, including information for consultant certification, because that's what we do. We teach the other professionals how to do this stuff as much as we do you guys. But you get all access to all of the information that the insider tips that the practitioners have. I share all of that. And as you go through here, you can see that there are over 642 minutes, which is approximately 10 hours of content, and then 4 hours of live masterclass with me, which will start at the end of June. So you have access to all of these modules to help you get prepared now, to get like the one question we had coming in, to be ready, so that when those rounds start, you've given yourself the best chance of success. And when we are, like, one of the things that we offer within our firm is our collaborative review. We love to do those at the beginning, helping you to set things up. And we work all the way through issuance of, creation of the profile, receiving the ITA, submitting the APR, even uploading all the documents with you. So that's what we do on the collaborative review side. But the course right now, this is the part where if you register now and you get access to it, you can start working through all of these modules. And you can see there's over, I think, 50 different lessons that cover all aspects, including a very comprehensive section that focuses entirely on the documents, with checklists and sample documents and information sheets and things that you can give to your bank, things that you can give to your employer to help with reference letters, knock selection tools that we've created, hours of work calculation tools. So all of that is designed to make sure that you don't screw something up. You guys know that there's a one-touch policy with Express Entry, and if you get something wrong, you're done. And you've seen what happened with the rounds of invitations. Once they resume, they're going to be so high. But even then, even if there is a little bit of settling, you may qualify now, but if you get your application returned, that's the biggest thing that I face with clients. And it's so hard to tell them, hey, there's nothing I can do. If you'd done it properly in the beginning, you'd have gotten permanent residence. But because you made this little mistake, which I covered in my course, or, that we would have caught through the collaborative review, you would be a permanent resident. But because you missed that, your application was returned, you're back into the pool, and it's likely you're never going to get drawn again. And that's why we've done this. That's why we've gone to such great lengths to try to reach as many people as possible. So we'll see what happens. We'll see, if Uton here is correct, or whether, as Cedric and I kind of feel together, we don't think they're going to be able to race through and actually to the point where the minister can implement those targeted draws by July, but only time will tell. And we've got a couple weeks here. Maybe if somehow they rush it through and they don't implement it until the end of July, well, I guess maybe, but wow, this is government, and I would be shocked, very shocked. All right. Any last minute things, Cedric, before we sign off today?
Yeah, I mean, we're dealing with so many changes, right? So many unknowns, what program's going to come out. And, we've stressed this, but what you can do right now is focus on what's in your control: passport, language, police certificates, and whatnot, obviously. But also, try to inform yourself. Take the courses, do reading, talk about legal strategy with lawyer. We want to prepare as much as we can for the changes that are coming up.
Yeah. And those of you who have some great questions that haven't yet been answered, and it's so hard. Okay, I'll answer one last one here. It's a quick one. Surjit says, if we withdraw a file, does our data get deleted? No, it doesn't. It's a part of your record permanently forever. So I absolutely want you guys to understand that it is there forever. And last one from Roger. Entered Canada as a minor 13 years ago, asking for refuge with my parents. We overstayed for about 3 months out of ignorance and got deported. I'm an engineer and master now, wanting to return via EE. Right here, Roger. You need to book a consult so we can sort this out. Do you need an ARC? Do you need an authorization to return to Canada? Do you have that, as being deported? If that was the case, that is going to be an issue. So make sure 100% that you slide over to our website and book a consultation with with the man, the myth, and the legend right here, Cedric. And if for whatever reason timing doesn't work, we've got Chanel here, we've got Alicia, and the old timer here at the end. So you can book a consult with any of us. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
I mean,
oh yes, go ahead.
I was just gonna comment. I mean, I don't fully understand the question. I mean, got deported while seeking refugee status, overstayed status. I have lots of questions.
Yeah. So I'm what I read through this is that the claim was refused, and then they took their sweet time leaving, and then the government said, okay, you didn't leave voluntarily, and then called them in, and then ultimately they were removed.
It's complicated. It's complicated.
Yeah, it's definitely not something that we can answer in the comment within a live stream video across all of our social channels. All right. Okay. Tomorrow, I'm going to figure out a way to get Instagram going. So those of you who have Instagram, we will get that set up with Alicia. And other than that, remember, subscribe to the courses, connect over. If you have any questions, book a consult. We're here to help in any way. And ultimately, I will be back tomorrow with Alicia at 11 a.m. So if you didn't get your questions answered today, come back and join us tomorrow at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. And Alicia and I will be here to answer some more questions for you. All right. Take care, you guys. Thanks, Cedric.